What's up guys, Mike Murtis here, and just wanted to talk about the progress on my Street Fighter 2 cabinet. Looking better every day, and you know, I really can't remember what exactly I talked about on my last video about this, so I'm going to kind of run over everything really quick, and we'll just go from there. Obviously, my favorite so far still is the Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition Turbo Hyper Fighting, that's a mouthful, marquee that I replaced. Originally it had the Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition marquee on it. That was pretty faded out, unfortunately. Wasn't looking too good. And went ahead and printed a new version of the marquee out. Had to do some editing in Photoshop to get it to fit to the size of the cabinet. But it worked nicely, and the marquee looks fabulous, as you can see there. I don't remember if I talked about this in the last video or not, but I really wanted to do some side art for this cabinet. This had some old Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition side art for it, and I actually have that on one of my main cabs, so I decided I wanted to do something a little different just to make it stand out a little bit differently from the game room. Now, first thing I did was I printed this Street Fighter 2 marquee out, and on an adhesive paper went ahead and stuck it onto the side of the cabinet. The issue was I used some paper that I just bought at a store locally, and it was literally just sticky matte paper. It didn't work very well. It bubbled really badly, and it just didn't look too good. And another issue was when I pulled it off, it left tons and tons of sticky residue and all sorts of other stuff with it. If you're going to go with an adhesive paper, get something that has a low-tack adhesive to it. It'll still stick well, but it won't stick onto the paint and stuff like that. And a heavier duty material like a gloss or even like a vinyl will work just a lot better, and you'll get less bubbles. And if you do misplace it the first time, it's a little easier to remove and put back on. So I had to pull off the old decals I had here and use some Goo Gone to get all the sticky residue off, just so I could clean it off and get this new one on. So this is on both sides of the cabinet. Looks very cool. At least gives the cabinet side art a little bit of a pop to it. And this is another thing I actually added today, and this is the side art for my cabinet, the mid-side art. The original Street Fighter 2, the World Warrior, has Ryu featured on it, and he's kind of got his back to you, and he's kind of looking over to the side. And I thought that was cool, but I couldn't find a decent file of that. And I happen to have a really decent file scan of the Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition, the Japanese flyer that they put out for this thing. And take a look at this. I mean, I believe this was the same cover they used for the PC Engine version of Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition. But of course it's got Ryu on the cover, and it's got Bison, and Bison is kind of doing his Psycho Crusher deal there. And it just looks awesome. So I figured instead of doing Street Fighter 2 The World Warrior, I was going to do this instead. Give a little bit of side art to it, make it pop, and I think it looks very cool. And if we fly a little bit over to the side here, which you can barely see, let me grab my little work lamp here. Got the same thing there, and the same thing there. So pretty much the same thing all around that side. Next deal. I actually went ahead and with the help of my dad, got all the buttons resoldered. The connections for this thing were soldered in the first place, so we got rid of all the bad solder connections and redid them, so that's working great. And we also went ahead and replaced the joysticks. The joysticks on this thing were pretty old, so we replaced them with HAP competition sticks, and working very, very nicely. So much easier to pull off moves now. This one needs to be broken in a little bit, but this one's doing good and pulling off all the moves without an issue. And really the only thing left to do, if you see the color difference between here, I got to get a proper colored red button to match this one. These buttons are fine. And really, what else did we do with this thing? Oh, if you look, see how these screws are very rusted out? We took some sandpaper and cleaned those up. Those turned out really nice. My dad said it'd probably be a good idea just to spray paint them black, which I think I will do eventually. But I still have the four corners to do. And if you look, there's a little bit of residue kind of in between the buttons here that are underneath it. I don't know if we can clean that up or if I just want to get a new control panel, because it might be a little hard to see with the light, but there's definitely a color difference going on. The sticker art down here is kind of faded, so eventually it may be time for a new control panel. Finally, the last deal, which I gotta back up here for because I don't have my wide angle lens going on here, is the bezel art, all the graphics that you see on the side here. With this cabinet not being an original Street Fighter II cabinet, they kind of did a hack job with the original artwork for this. They cut out the bottom, they cut out the sides, and then they kind of piss poorly taped it to the side of the cabinet just to hold it up. And you know, it didn't look horrible considering I've seen worse jobs, but it didn't look great either. So I was thinking about replacing the artwork for it. I was looking online, it was kind of expensive, and for whatever reason I was going through my files and I realized, holy crap, I have the bezel artwork for this as well as the Street Fighter II The World Warrior. So I went ahead and printed one out to see how it was going to fit in my cabinet. I sized it down to the dimensions of the glass from corner to corner. And with the control panel, I just wanted to see what the general overall layout was going to be, to see how it would work with this cabinet. Unfortunately, much like the original bezel artwork, you could barely see the controls. You could barely see the Capcom logo and the how to play. They were all buried on the bottom of the control panel and you couldn't see it. So it looked kind of stupid. So what I ended up doing was I took all the little pavement marks that the artwork has for this and cloned it in Photoshop, and cloned it and extended it out past the normal characters. And once I did that, I cut and pasted the instructions as well as the Capcom logo and the other portion of the instructions and raised them up. Now, the only thing this cabinet does have cut off still is the ultimate feature, character versus character, and I believe it's the 78 possible matchups. But I'm not too sad about that because it's not a huge deal, and it required a little bit more photoshopping that I just didn't care for. I was more concerned about getting the instructions just to kind of look up so everything looked level with it. So a little Photoshop time, and I have my own bezel that actually fits properly and looks good. So this machine is turning into really, really good shape. It's working great, it's playing great, and like I said, I think the only thing I got left to do is to try to clean up this control panel a little bit or replace the control panel artwork altogether, and Street Fighter II will be done. Hallelujah. Peace.